Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency webinars, monthly webinars, presented by ICLE Local Governments for Sustainability, and in my capacity as the focal point of Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency. My name is Yunus Arakan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy. This would be a session for 1 hour. For those who are joining our webinars for the first time, this has been a monthly process since 2020, beginning of 2020. These sessions are repeated every month and the third Wednesday, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And these sessions are recorded and then they are made available. You can watch those recordings afterwards and access to the presentations. We usually run through around 40 minutes or 35 minutes of a presentation. Then we have either guests or then we immediately open the floor for discussions. Today, we are expecting our colleagues who have been joining the advocacy work at COP26. They may also be joining it, but presentation will be mainly delivered by me. During the presentation, you may type in your points in the Q&A box or chat box. And if you'd like to participate, you can also raise your hand so that my colleague Patricia can enable you to participate also virtually at the second part of the discussion. So with this housekeeping rules completed, let's continue. The video, those who are coming again for the first time, is prepared for the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. Actually, we would like to come up with a new one for the Glasgow, actually. And this was a review of our achievements over the past 5 years, or the importance of Paris Agreement. This is available in our playlist. There's also the past webinars are available with the recordings and as well as presentations. The website of the LGMA, Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency, is also updated with our roadmap and other links, which we'll go through today, so that you can also access this information later on. Those who are, again, have joined for the first time, Paris Agreement is a new era because of the innovative recognition of multi-level action. The innovative recognition of the importance of engagement of all levels of government. Multi-level action comes in Glasgow. Now we will talk about it, as well as 1.5-degree goal and climate neutrality. We all said that the success of COP26 depends on work at home, so that NDCs should come on with ambitious ambition and ambitious commitments, and we have made some progress. We will touch upon that. For us, it was also a part of a duty now. It's not anymore voluntary work, and that the new 1.5-degree vision is also something that is beyond just mitigation, adaptation. It's a holistic approach. All actors of the society, all stakeholders of the society should join and share the benefits of a new civilization that we're all building it. For the first slide, I wanted to give like a concluding remark at the beginning so that you can have an understanding of what COP26 meant for us and what could be expecting on the way future. First of all, the Glasgow Climate Pact, which is the major outcome, but there are so many other decisions. It's around 35 decisions overall. Is not an emergency mode outcome. It is more like an incremental outcome. That's the biggest failure and this frustration. It is a frustration because the world was expecting this. The world has been experiencing disasters, climatic disasters, scientific data, all support that we're in a climate emergency. But diplomats, nations, were not able to accept this as such. Their lack of acceptance doesn't mean that we are not in an emergency mode. We are, but it is just the UNFCCC process is not ready to accept this. However, of course, the Glasgow Climate Pact has been instrumental, and it was helpful, and it should be welcome because it opened the second phase of the Paris Agreement. So the first phase of the Paris Agreement was like we were all in the same football, let's say, area, but nobody knew the rules. So nobody knows how to score a goal or how to defend. So now we have the rules of the game available in all details, including finance. And therefore, it is much more possible to make a much decent play and much fair play. But also that with this now clarification, we can also accelerate much faster so that the past should not be a reference to our future. But then more importantly, we are very excited to endorse the Glasgow Climate Pact because multi-level and cooperative action is enshrined in the preamble as a follow-up to the Paris Agreement. So we'll touch upon this later on. During COP, there were a number of announcements, and it's really hard to catch up who has committed to what and how much they are sincere, how much they will be long-term living, how much are the same things recycled or reused from the previous commitments. Yes, this is a question of transparency, but there are several of them very powerful: methane, deforestation, fossil phase out. There are new progress with the new vision of the Marrakesh Partnership and making race to zeros and race to resilience much more effective. And we have several bilateral agreements, especially from US. The US-China and US-Japan agreements are very, very important. So now it is the litmus test of all these commitments is that how will they reflect into the indices? As long as they are not in the indices, nobody will trust these commitments because the Paris Agreement depends on the indices. And that's the good news. The second good news from the Paris Climate Pact in Glasgow is that there is a provision now. It encourages, it requests every nation to bring a new NDC or refresh their NDCs every year. That is different than the previous version. It was a 5-year cycle. Now it's every year, or at least every year nations can bring one, as long as there's a demand from the bottom up. This can happen when there's a change in the government, but even without a change in government, nations are expected to bring new new NDCs so that they can demonstrate that they are advancing, they are ratcheting up their climate commitments and ambitions. In that sense, that is something that is opening the way for an emergency mode, let's say, in future. But most importantly, this was the last series of a COP hosted in Northern world, or let's say in Europe, and definitely, especially Africa and small island states have huge frustrations because the key expectation on loss and damage and finance are not met. Neither the $100 billion is fulfilled, nor loss and damage, well, there will be any facility. There's a dialogue kicking off, but it's not clear what will be end up. Of course, this gives a huge responsibility and opportunity to the next presidencies, which will be hosted by Egypt and United Arab Emirates. And this is the moment where the things that were left behind left beneath the discussion, especially those, let's say, soft measures that are much more transformative and linked to the climate emergency, like food, like resilience and adaptation, like loss and damage, migration, culture, and hopefully urbanization may come up under the new presidency of the Egyptian government. And of course, this is our wish list, but we don't know the full reality. Whereas last week we heard officially from the Minister of Environment of Egypt that they would like to position food at the heart of their planning. At least this is confirmed, and they're also famous because they were the host of the biodiversity COP in 2018. So there are evidences, and in Africa being the youngest continent, the continent that has the highest rate of urbanization, and the continent which has embraced a lot of our work, has the potential to give us the hope that we can now expect these topics to be coming more clearly on the agenda in Sharm el-Sheikh. For those who have not been involved with us, this slide was used especially during the LGMA briefings, daily briefings at COP26. So I wanted to keep this here. This shows what is the mission of LGMA. What is LGMA? I will not go into too much of it, but I think this will be a helpful reference for you. Where as of COP26, we have more than 30 networks now. We are the official process to the negotiations and UNFCCC processes, and this becomes even more important because one of the outcomes that we will discuss later on, for the first time, constituencies are officially recognized in the UNFCCC documents, and these are the milestones that we have achieved over the past years. When I say past year, I'm talking about 30 plus years. Now, the reality is that we are in a hybrid advocacy world, and that may be one of the biggest critics that can be raised to the UK government as the COP26 presidency, because until the last 3 weeks, they insisted that Glasgow will be in person. And we as constituents have been telling them that there's no reason for such an insistence. Having virtual components, virtual elements does not block an in-person meeting, but there was an insistence from their side that they would not like to even give any signal of a virtual element. But then 3 weeks before, they said that no, we have a platform, everything will be there, and if you cannot enter to the rooms, you can watch it, and this created confusions. It continued until the last minute, until last day. Let's be realistic. If this had been signaled out, or if this had been prepared beforehand, COP26 logistically could have been, and technically could have been, much less cumbersome. But anyway, it is what it is. But it is true, the next phases will be fully accepting that there will be virtual element in every COP. So let's remember, we are now focusing on these 4 pillars: that the UNFCCC regular process, presidency initiatives, and we have seen this especially in the case of UK. They have had a huge agenda that presidency shaped throughout the 2 weeks. We don't know how much this will happen in the Egyptian presidency, but for sure there will also be efforts. Of course, the champions climate action agenda, and especially with their revised, improved agenda, will be important. And LGMA, the logic is that while we will be contributing all these 3 above, this doesn't stop us to design our own initiatives, to design our own summits and spaces, because this is the place where we are comfortably free to speak. And that exactly was the logic of Multi-Level Action Pavilion at COP26, and we will touch upon it again later. There was a very concrete evidence for us that, for us, COP is starting a new era of time for multi-level action, because we have already seen this happening from the bottom up, that more than 60 countries across the world, from the north and south, they already have raised their ambitions because they have worked with local and regional governments. And that was our biggest document and the biggest evidence. And I am confident that this played a significant role in our communications, especially with the leaders, the prime ministers, the UN Secretary General, and the champions. And that's why we have made this achievement later on. We will touch upon it later on. But the reality is that there are countries who are really working with local energy governments, of course, in their own context, and they're raising their ambitions. And that's what we want this to be embraced. And that is exactly what Glasgow did by putting the word multi-level in the preamble paragraph. Throughout COP26, for those who have been in and out, because even when you're in, you cannot notice that there are other things working around yourself. There were, let's say, 5 centers of gravities inside the UNFCCC. Of course, the blue zone and the green zone as the main differentiation, and each of them have different logics. So inside the blue zone, we have multi-level action pavilion as the home for cities and subnationals. It was hybrid, and then there's UNFCCC spaces, and then other pavilions. Inside the green zone or outside the blue zone, we had immediate green zone space, but also Glasgow City Hall, Edinburgh even hosted numerous events. What we noted throughout the whole COP, to the UNFCCC accreditation, there were more than 400 representatives of local and regional governments. This was impressive number because this was, if this was all in one party, they would be the second largest party of the COP. So this shows how much we are strong in this space as such. And throughout this 2 weeks, more than 200 events were convened, and it is extremely a difficult challenge. And I even started to give up to track what happened where and who did what. It may be good that at least we know that so many things have happened. If we can finalize the compilation, that will be good, but that shows our diversity and strength as well, once again. We are grateful that our dream of multi-level action pavilion became true. It was a success story. It was an unbelievable gratitude and unprecedented gratitude that we'd like to share to Scottish government, because without their perseverance, without their political, technical, and financial support, that space will not be possible. This was the most expensive COP we had ever seen. But if there was no LGMA community who had come into the game and who have brought their energy, their potential, their willingness, their inputs to the space by hosting those events, either as a co-host or a contributing partner financially or as a session partner, this wouldn't be possible as well. So Scottish government, equally as the convener, and the LGMA community in its entirety have demonstrated this fantastic collaboration, and we made this possible that whatever happens in the COP space, we always have our sacred heaven, which is this 100-meter square. It was a hybrid space. There were so many sessions who had connections from Australia to Hawaii, from North America to Africa, that it was really the place where local, regional governments and cities, towns, and regions have all united, and they have gathered. We also use this as our base for our daily briefings. That was also very helpful because it was not just limited to in-person, it was communicated to the world through our Hopin platform of the virtual pavilion, and that demonstrated our power, especially of the second week when negotiations started to evolve on the decision-making documents. The whole presentations, I think we have around more than 70 sessions in these 2 weeks. All of them are available on ICLEI's YouTube channel. But we also have worked with IISD, Earth Negotiation Bulletin. They also have followed selected events every day through our recommendation as convener of the space. And we are also proud this diversity that we have been able to represent because of the IISD's coverage as well. So I think it was a good representation of our capacity and vision. Over the past couple of weeks since we left Glasgow, there had been some discussion with some partners. Some of them were criticizing whether it was enough. I just wanted to give this picture once again. In the past, the Glasgow is the fourth, let's say, milestone. The first one was the adoption of UNFCCC. The second was the adoption of Kyoto Protocol. The third was the Paris Agreement. Compared to Paris Agreement, the language that is in the preamble paragraph is strengthened. It is much more meaningful. It is much more reflecting to the reality, and it is much more taking us to the real ultimate goal. So that is good news. The second thing, there is much more clear references. It says local and regional governments explicitly. There is a reference to the mechanisms through Marrakesh Partnership, reference to constituencies. There is also a recommendation to the youth in local decision-making process. We have progressive local engineers have attested already this, the experience of Bonn with working with Bonn for Future, with Fridays for Future, or Recife. Similarly, we have already started to make an effort to bring youth into local decision-making process. So it is really nice that it is now incorporated in the Glasgow Climate Pact as well. And there are so many other decisions. So it is a huge, let's say, it's not even incremental, it's exponential in terms of growth. And let me put it this way. Just one word is not something that has to be undervalued. In '97, in the Kyoto Protocol, the term flexibility mechanisms was just one sentence. And after 5 years, and after 10 years later on, this one sentence enabled a huge sector, a financing or climate finance sector, the investment sector, trading sector, experts and communities and processes. So it is up to us, local energy governments, LGMA, and our partners to use this word multi-level to turn it into a complete new way of multi-level action as a new normal of the second phase of Paris Agreement. Therefore, we have the window of opportunity created. We are now able to squeeze through this window of opportunity, or you can also consider it as the first brick on the wall, and that we can now build it further. Therefore, it is opening new doors, new frontiers for us, together with other outcomes, and we will touch upon it also in more details. This is a list. It is all text, but we have all the recordings. We also have the pictures, but this is a diversity of our engagement official UNFCCC channels. These are important because all these inputs are in the notes, in the records of the UNFCCC. There are several side events. Of course, side events are not in the official record, but these are the ones that are official in the records. And we're very happy that the diversity and the strength of our statements reflect the unity, but also a strength in terms of our diversity of our networks. So we started, for example, our press conference, which was on the first day of the World Cities Day. This was almost like setting the scene of the process that we would like to expect, and this proved to be true, a very helpful opportunity. Then at the opening, we have started with our work from Honduras. At the time when Chilean government from Latin America handed over the presidency, having a Latin American mayor was also something nice. Throughout the representation of the different dialogues, we had again diversity from Latin American leaders. During the last, especially the second week, we have intensive engagement from European and UK representatives, from councillors, Mayor of Greater Manchester, from European Committee of the Regions, as well as Mayor of Turku, Mayor of London, Mayor of Bristol, in so many events happening. They were available and visible. That's also good. Scottish First Minister as well. And then the concluding event, the closing statement was delivered by our colleague Ladislas, Secretary General of RALGA, Rwanda Association of Local Government Associations, Authorities, which is also a nice segue to the COP27, which will be an African COP. So I think that gave us really the power of that we are a global family, and we are inclusive, and we are strong with every member of our network. Once again, we are trying to still compile the final list, but there's a huge list of web streamings at the UNFCCC official side events, the presidency events, and others. So this is good that we are visible in so many spaces. An important point, Marrakesh Partnership has developed its vision for the next 5 years. So let's be realistic. Marrakesh Partnership was also an eclectic process. It all started with Nazca in 2019. Then it went to Lima Paris Action Agenda. Then Marrakesh Partnership came up. Then we had the champions. Every champions tried to contribute into added new elements. But of course, it was not easy to make the synchronization. And of course, in the last 2 years, we had an impressive leadership from Nigel, especially Nigel Topping. While we have always been enjoying Gonzalo's leadership, Nigel, as being one of the insider of the climate community, being aware of the limitations, but also the opportunities, he has provided huge momentum to the process, and they had a fantastic synergy with Gonzalo. So they have not just raised the ambition, the concept in these 2 years, but they have also worked with a vision for the next 5 years. And that's particularly important because what will happen after the UK presidency, we don't know yet. So having much more consolidation, having much more harmonization of all these processes that talking to each other, the pathways, the races, and the breakthroughs, now gives us a clear picture. And more importantly, one of the biggest success of the Marrakesh Partnership is that it is now officially recognized as a process to contribute in the global stocktake. This is very important because since the beginning, we as ICLE and most of our members in the LGMA, we were asking Marrakesh Partnership to feed into the NDCs as the end result, as the final product. So now with the global stocktake, this has become more clear. So it's not just initiatives of non-part stakeholders, but how do they influence the national action? So these are all positive elements. Obviously, there are still areas for progress or improvement, or some needs for clarification. These are, first of all, once again, how will the next presidency lead this process? Who will be the next champion? How will they make sure the synergy? Second is synergy with the rest of the other UNFCCC process, especially the rest of stakeholder mechanisms, and as well as the financial and business model, both to this process, Marrakesh Partnership, in terms of the machinery, the secretariat, the volunteers, the pro bono consultants, how will they continue their work, but also we as partners who are part of the process, which are the Sherpas, let's say, the delivering the pathways, the thematic groups, how will we also secure that we can continue to serve to this process? Because it's not funded from external resources. I mean, those who can manage it, that's fine. But it is true that there is a need for more stable resourcing of the partners and the staff of this process, and make sure they are also working in synergy with other stakeholder engagement mechanisms such as constituencies and others. So, but that can all be sorted out on the way of the progress of the implementation, and this is particularly good that it is addressed as in the Glasgow Climate Package. Once again, we touched upon the Glasgow Climate Package, but let's remember there may be a confusion that the Glasgow Climate Package, in fact, is one abbreviation or one definition, but it is reflecting to 3 documents. So there are 3 Glasgow Climate Pacts, or there are 3 documents which in its entirety make the Glasgow Climate Pact. The one of them is very short. This is the Kyoto Protocol, which was much more already almost about to cede now. But the other one, the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement, is the main one. And because there are some things that is not contained in UNFCCC or not contained in Paris Agreement, there are different paragraphs. So in fact, we have talking about 2 documents. One is 71 paragraph long. This is under the UNFCCC, and under the Paris Agreement, there's 97 paragraph long. So the preamble paragraph applies to both. The preamble paragraph is applying to both the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. The reference to collaboration, adaptation, and implementation exists in all of the places. We have listed those, but there is other decisions. The Article 6.8 is something that we really worked all together as an LGMA constituency in the last days. Before going to this one, let me underline one more point. It was a magnificent refreshment or reinvigoration of the LGMA spirit and community to make sure that our texts are visible in this Glasgow Climate Pact. Let's be realistic. None of them were existing when the first text was released by the UK presidency. And because that was a shock, a surprise for us, we really had used all our resources. And that's something that has to be commended to all members, both in person in Glasgow, but also even virtually contributing from all around the world. I must confess, at the beginning, I thought it was something, let's say, a pity, but it's like every crisis can lead into some opportunities. I think this starting point was so low for us, was an opportunity that we understood, and we remembered the need for continuous activities and engagement in the advocacy space. If some of those texts were already in the UK version, we wouldn't fight for it maybe, and we wouldn't probably appreciate or acknowledge or take ownership. So I think there's always a positive outcome from all these kind of experiences. So through this opportunity, let me commend and congratulate and thank all the LGMA community in this process. Coming back, the second outcome is non-market mechanisms. This is a new space. This is a new financing stream that will come. And we want to insert sustainable integrated urban and territorial development as an approach, as a concrete approach. We haven't made this achievement yet, but there are references to public bodies, public stakeholders, which includes us, local and regional governments. There's reference to the non-market approaches being developed in the local and subnational context, which is extremely valuable. And there is an opportunity that we can submit views to define what these non-market approaches are. Of course, others will also do that. But the mobilization that was in Glasgow is now has to turn into this much more focused and very, very targeted advocacy, so that we prepare our text, we approach to partners, and that we make sure non-market mechanisms or non-market approaches recognize urbanization explicitly. That's our ultimate goal. The third decision out of this 30 plus decisions is Glasgow Work Program for Action for Climate Empowerment. This is one of the soft powers of the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement, and I think this is one of the most powerful ones as well. Before my life in ICLEI, I was the national focal point for Turkey on Article 6, and I've seen on the ground, personally, if effectively used, education, training, public awareness, how this can change the public mindset, the media, the decision makers, the lawmakers, so that the things that were not possible before can immediately roll out. This was the way we have worked Turkey's accession to Kyoto Protocol and UNFCCC as well. So now the new work program of Glasgow is including so many references, an unprecedented number of references to local energy governments. And this is not from nowhere. Over the past years, past 2 or 3 years, we have been working, ICLEI particularly, and some other members of the LGMA as well, but ICLEI particularly was attending almost every session of the ACE negotiations. We had participated in the Burgenland conference. We were a partner of the ACE. We have worked with the Austrian government in a project. We're still working with them, ACE-AT. So that shows that if you are present throughout the years, the outcomes are positive for you. And that will be our biggest message towards COP27 as well. And then there were so many initiatives, especially on finance, the subnational banks, the subnational funds, Edinburgh process, biodiversity, cities with nature, regions with nature, Glasgow food and climate declarations. Unfortunately, none of them were recognized, the UK presidency, unfortunately, or they were reflecting to the official outcomes. But they are there and we will work on it. One important outcome was the Scotland and Wallonia regions committing for volunteer contributions to the loss and damage facility, which was expected to come up. But this shows once again the power of local and regional governments in bridging the different partners of the world. As we said, US-China and US-Japan partnerships are important, and we will try to make a more complete list as well. Let's remember, if we go back, the roadmap, the Glasgow multi-level action roadmap, is, if we look at all these 4 elements, is fully now implemented in Glasgow, and it's opening a huge door for us. So this, I believe, demonstrates the approach that we have taken up in designing these 4 elements, how appropriate they were and how result-oriented they were, so that we could comfortably say that we're on the right track, and we encourage all LGMA members to embrace and work on it. So we will share the full details. Of course, you have the website, but we will also include this in the presentation as well, so that you can have a look at it. Let's have some discussions on that. So how to approach to next COP? First of all, this 4 blocks, the UNFCCC regular business, the presidencies, the Marrakesh partnership, and LGMA and our relation with the delegations will always be our guiding elements for any engagement in any COP. So it's not anymore an option or exception, but this is now a default engagement model. For the UNFCCC business, there will be numerous discussions. The one important point is that the next discussions, technical meetings, will be in Bonn, but the format is not known yet. Let's remember, the in-person meeting was something that UK presidency has particularly put an emphasis on, and they have mobilized huge resources financially and technically. We don't know whether German government will be able to demonstrate such a support or such a capacity, whether UNFCCC will be able to lead any of such a preparation. So it is still not clear how this SP56 will run in June 2022 in Bonn. There will be regional climate weeks. These are even more important now. That's something that we have to keep an eye on. In the presidencies, as we said, it's really good to see that COP26 president has immediately started to communicate information, that they are making sure that their presidency is not over. Just on the contrary, they have started to deliver their work. So I think that's a good leadership. We are waiting for information from Egyptian COP27 presidency. I personally have not met any of their delegations. I don't think any of the LGMA partners have made any real, let's say, institutional dialogues. If there is, please inform us. But what we hear, as I said last week, there was a debate which included Mayor of Izmir as ICLE's climate action co-chair, but also a champion of the UN Food System Summit. He was in a session with food and COP26 outcomes, and Minister of Environment concretely said from Egypt that they would like to put food into heart of the COP27 agenda. So food, resilience, nature, finance, loss and damage, culture, migration, and hopefully urbanization. As we said before, we have a solid base now to work on urbanization, to materialize our dream to have the first urbanization ministerial and mayoral summit at COP could come true if we convince and if we work with the presidency effectively. And I am sure we will be able to do it. We had at least experienced this in the Sharm el-Sheikh summit of the biodiversity in 2018. I am confident that we will be able to make it, but this needs a huge leadership from the African stakeholders, African partners, African members of the LGMA community. Marrakesh partnership, we will have to see how we will engage in the new. There are some differences, but even more importantly, it's not that anymore the number of cities 1,000, 1,500, but how many of those cities and regions committed to race to zero and race to resilience, how much they're delivering it. And that needs also a discussion with the NDCs as well. So coming to us, LGMA, the questions we have to ask is, once again, Egypt is not UK, Sharm el-Sheikh is not Scotland or Glasgow. This means the conditions, the facilities, the relations, and the financial resources will not be the same. This will shape our way of engagement. Let's be realistic. It's not a comment, it's a fact that has to be taken up. But we, for sure, I assume, would like to continue with multi-level action pavilion in the Blue Zone because we have understood the value. And knowing that every COP will be very important, we don't have to wait for another 5 years. I assume we have to make sure that multi-level action pavilion should exist in every COP from now on. But this needs huge financial and technical resources, human resources. Therefore, host country, host city, host region is extremely important to secure us. But especially if we are talking about a solidarity, the members of the Global North of the LGMA should also put their hands under on the ground, and they should put their shares so that they don't leave the host city and region from the Global South alone in securing this space. This year we will have 3 COPs, biodiversity in Kunming, desertification and land in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, and we will have climate COP in Egypt. Obviously, this gives huge potential to Africa and responsibility to Africa, as well as China, especially considering Chinese relation with African governments over the past 10 years. So let's make sure that we can make sure there's a good dialogue with us with all this leadership there. And that's also an important agenda that UN Secretary General is rolling out. It's our common agenda. In the meeting with the UN Secretary General, we had made very clear that we want an action on the climate emergency, a multi-level action task force on the climate emergency or something like that. And the moment COP concluded, the message from UN Secretary General was that that's good, but it has to be in an emergency mode, climate emergency mode. So we are fully in line with the UN Secretary General. Therefore, we have to make sure that we also work with him. And that's one of the reasons why it is also important, because one of the biggest weaknesses of the climate process is that everybody wants to solve all the problems of the world in the UNFCCC space. However, UNFCCC has its limitations. One major limitation, it's just the ministers of climate and ministers of environment. So discussions on other fora, G20, G7, and other spaces is extremely important so that ministers of environment can comfortably commit or can comfortably deliver the outcomes of their national governments. Therefore, dialogue at the highest level at the UN General Assembly, UN Secretary General, is extremely important. We will not give up our work on Edinburgh process, food declaration, especially the subnational leadership on loss and damage. We will bring this back to COP27, and I think African partners should be aware of it, and they should be happy about what we are bringing to the table, so that they can enrich and they can support us as well. We have to go back to those countries to bring their NDCs with multi-level, much more ambitious, and we also have to start thinking about a new way of coalition, because there are so many references, and multi-level implementation is something that reflects to the public institution. We have to be working with legislators, and we have done this with Globe International. Over the past 2 weeks, we had very good dialogues. We joined, again, Mayor of Izmir, ICLEI's co-chair on climate action, was addressing the closing stage plenary at the Scottish Parliament. Globe has been created as a new parliamentary group, and we are supporting them. So legislative bodies, legislative authorities at the federal and subnational level and local level, executive bodies, as well as LGMA, and mainly LGMA in the local and regional level, but also even judicial bodies. We should be bringing all them together if we are serious about multi-level action, because the synergy between public authorities is exactly the needed thing to deliver the multi-level action. So we would be coming back with some more ideas on that, but I think we will be working collectively to make this a reality, and we are very good signals from different partners. And obviously G20, Urban 20, G7, Urban 7 will all have to be coming into the game. And here is the map that we can see that there will be an intense process. We will start with February, UN Environment Assembly and Stockholm +50. In March, we will have Middle East Regional Climate Week, the Zero Carbon Forum by US and Japan. This will be the second version, following this year's experience. UN President of the General Assembly will have a discussion on Keto +1. In April, it's followed by Biodiversity COP in Kunming. Then in May, we will have Desertification COP in Abidjan. It will be at the same time with ICLE Malmö World Congress. In June, we will have the UN talks, SP56, but also World Urban Forum in Katowice. HLPF will be taking place in New York. August, September will be Asia, Pacific, Latin America, and other regional climate weeks. And that will be important to continue to keep an eye. In September, we will also have to follow the UN General Assembly. In October is always our Urban October. We have to make better use of it. Daring Cities will continue in 2022, and UCLG World Congress will also be held in Daejeon in Korea. And November is Sharm el-Sheikh. And throughout these months, we have to check where the G20 and Urban 20, as well as G7 and Urban 7 agendas will fall into. This year, G20 is under the Indonesian leadership, and G7 is under the German leadership. The government is just about to be announced soon, so let's wait for additional announcements from Germany and Europe, hopefully. Yes, this ends my presentation. I know it's not easy for audience to listen to such a long and condensed and heavy content-wise presentation, but I appreciate your patience. I would like to invite now the floor for all partners, especially those who have been active on the ground, in person or virtually, to share their views on the presentation we have delivered, additions, remarks, failures, mistakes, or success stories. Feel free. And if not, we could also, of course, we will also give floor for others who have not been with us, so that they can maybe raise questions or ask questions. I see Eva from CMR raising hand. Patricia, can you give the floor to Eva?
Yeah. Hi, Yunus. I think that I've been given the floor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Okay, perfect. First of all, as usual, very clear presentation. So many thanks for gathering all this information in a couple of slides. That's always a challenge. Second, I wanted to congratulate you personally for the impressive work that you've done, not only during the COP days, which were crazy, but in the preparatory phase. So I think that we're also gaining in recognition. So that's clear now in the text. And third is that I've seen in your slides that you're proposing an LGMA COP27 working group. So yes, I think that we need it, and now that we have very good basis to work on this, then I think that we know how to do it now. And as you said, that there are going to be a lot of hybrid moments. So I think that now we've learned the lesson from Glasgow. So I would suggest that we start really working as soon as possible to not to concentrate our whole effort at the very end and get very tired. So yes, I think that we will still have some hybrid moments. And also, as you know, Yunus, we're also very much involved in the HLPF, also the World Urban Forum, also the EU-Africa Summit with a local government forum in February. So we as CMR and platform, we have a lot of elements to contribute with to this COP. So please feel free to contact me so we can maximize our resources as well. And congratulations once more, and also to the whole team from ICLE who were very present and moderating late on the stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva, for this really kind recognition and acknowledgement. It's truly a pleasure, of course, personally, but also as ICLE, because the pavilion, the way it was designed, and the negotiations, also the contribution from regional offices of ICLE with other LGMA members. I think we really have elevated our advocacy to a new height, and I'm very happy in my capacity as the focal point. I was able to help this process, to facilitate this process, and I'm very grateful for all the LGMA members and the individuals like you and so many other partners having so much openness, showing so much openness and enthusiasm to work along these lines. So it's truly a really great pleasure. So let's continue to work, and I'm very happy that you have highlighted this. Obviously, COM27, where CMR is also very actively leading, should play an important role. That we have to work on it as well. That they should play an instrumental role in the COP27 in Africa. Any other questions or remarks? So we have one chat box message. Yeah. Let's see who has shared this. Pippa Halings. Hi, Pippa. Pippa Halings is counselor, and she's the member of the Parliament and National Committee of the Local Governments Association on Climate Change, which is a new task force, an innovative task force. And Pippa, I personally met with Pippa during COP26, and she was extremely powerful and motivated. We are so much enjoying your leadership, and now she has put an input into chat box. Let me read that. Through this opportunity, would like to express our gratitude to all the UK local and regional governments, LGA, core cities, and UK 100, COSLA, obviously, and all the cities, like from councils to metropolitan areas. So that was really a great pleasure for us to work with you all. So let's read from Pippa. Congratulations and many thanks, Yunus. Pippa Helings from LGA. I agree that there was an extremely focused and concerted effort during COP26, building on earlier work. What worked very well was having the advocacy messages clearly agreed. Also, the quality and high-level nature of our contributions in plenary and in the side meetings arranged with COP presidency. As a LGA, we would very much like to support actions over this year as part of multi-level action, multi-level climate emergency action group. Wow, that's a good proposal. Okay, is there also a working group on the NFA mechanisms for work on program on implementation? NFA. Pippa, can you remind me what was the NFA, the abbreviation for? While if you can write this, let me tell you, Article 6, yes, non-market approaches. Okay, good. So let's remember, we have said in our Glasgow roadmap that there will be a robust engagement of the LGMA constituency. Our proposal has to be, first of all, regional, so that every continent has to have their own chapters of LGMA chapters, and it should be thematic. And as you can remember, we tested this more or less for the first time during COP. We have created a special WhatsApp group on Article 6.8. There were intense discussions. I suggest, so that was the whole purpose, that through this next couple of weeks, we continue to exchange ideas. We enrich ourselves and come up with a working model, preferably before the end of the year, before some partners go out for their winter breaks or Christmas breaks, so that before the year starts, we have an idea of what to do. Therefore, I would encourage us to continue the discussions. We will put some of those into a shared document as well. The next webinar will be on the 15th of December, and let's talk about this. What can we do? And along these lines, the questions we were asked and additional points that you may come up with, so that we define how much we can advance and for what. Let me put it this way. A couple of minutes ago, before I started the session, I had joined the Environment Commission of the Committee of the Regions. They had their own internal meetings. Next week, ICLE will have its own webinar on Malmö, which I will share with you. We will be meeting with the chief negotiator from Sweden. A couple of weeks later on, we will also have Geneva Cities Hub will convene a session on and again, the COP26 outcomes, and Ambassador De Alba from Mexico, who was instrumental in Cancun and 2019 Climate Action Summit, he will join us. Last week on Friday, ICLE US had a discussion with their US members. So let's continue these discussions. Keep us informed about your outcomes internally or externally, that you have done this, so that we feed all these into our planning processes, and that we come up with a clear vision of how we go forward, including how we will manage this process. Again, I would like to encourage our partners from Africa to take leadership, to take more responsibility. We as ICLE will help, and all the others will help, but we need African partners to step up, and I'm confident they will come up as well. So in that sense, LGA, continuity of the LGA work is extremely essential. First of all, it is also your duty, because you're still the president as UK, but also you have so much to share. Your work at the local level and national level is so important that it continues to feed our work as well. So let's continue to this work on that ground. Okay, we have answered Peppa as well. I think we have 5 more minutes to go on. We can cut it short so that you can still use this 5 minutes in your life in an additional bonus. But you can use this opportunity either to type into chat box or Q&A, or raise your hand and intervene. But if not, of course, we can conclude the session quickly. I see one more chat box. So our next event, which we'll share with you with the links of this webinar, our next event will be on the 1st of December. Will be the Road to Malmö ICLE World Congress. Again, it will focus on COP26, and it will be with the Swedish chief negotiator Ola North from City of Malmö. I will be there, and we are invited Farhana Yaman from UK, and it will be a lively debate, especially on bringing nature and climate, but also the justice, climate justice elements into the process. So we will share with you the link, so you're more than welcome to join this one as well. And I think with that, we can announce that the session is now concluded. If there is no more further points that is raised. Yes, I see no inputs. Thanks a lot for your contribution and patience, and thanks a lot for your leadership. I wish you a fine day and fine night in the evening, wherever you are, and look forward to staying in touch.